Afternoon, everybody. I wanted to sort of share a bit about what we get up to at Dartmoor Estates over the next 30 minutes. In my usual style, I've tried to cram way too much into this, so Colin will be kicking me or Janet glaring at me if I go on too long. And it is quite sort of pictorial. You'll be pleased to know lots of pictures of nice property. So I wanted to focus on diversification, but also touch on biodiversity as well. I mean, we're much more established in diversification, but certainly embracing biodiversity, particularly at the moment, but I'll come on to that at the end. So just what I want to cover in the next half an hour, a tiny bit of background about me, which is very unimportant. I wanted to contextualise, a bit like Colin has, how Dartmoor Estates fits in with the Norfolk Moors National Park, which we value highly. I'll talk a bit about that. Then a very quick, and it will be quick, gallop through our six core businesses on the two estates and how they all gel and fit together. A look back at diversification of where we've come from, and then perhaps where we're headed next, and then a bit about biodiversity and that very exciting emergence of natural capital, and how rural estates play a hugely important part of that, which I firmly believe they do, and I can demonstrate that. So yeah, in terms of my background, I'm from a farming family in Weardale in County Durham. I went off to the Royal Agricultural, the university as it is now, was a college, and had very happy 3 years there. I did a land management degree, and I qualified as a surveyor in '96. And I spent the next 20 years with Smith School, all in the north of England, between 6 or 7 offices. And then we sold our business to Savills in 2015. I did 5 years with Savills, and then fortunately a job at the Dartmoor Estate came up, which I knew well. I had done some work. I did do a rent review on Danby Lodge, actually, which I probably won't be thankful by Andy wherever he's disappeared. So I knew the estate, the job came up, and maybe nobody else applied, but I managed to land the job, and I'll tell you about what we get up to. That's my background. Yeah, I mean, this is important to us in terms of our context with the national park and our work with the Norfolk Moors National Park. So approximately 80% of our 21,000 acres is within a national park. So all of Danby at 14,000 acres, and about half of Wycombe Estate is also in the national park, the northern part. And we're particularly proud stewards of 14,000 acres at Danby, of which about 10,000 is heather moorland. When it's not being attacked by a heather beetle, it's the beautiful purple colour that's so synonymous with the national park. So we're extremely proud of that fact. And we've enjoyed a very close working relationship with the National Park Authority, and I know Robert and Andy, and with Andy's team, work very closely together, and I very much hope to carry on in that vein. And we've met Tom several times, and he's already been a good support to us, so long may that continue. And of course, the national park status has driven success to the estate, not only the businesses we run and execute in hand, but also, just as importantly, if not more importantly, those of our tenants and business operators. So it's hugely important, and I wanted to emphasise that from the off, really. And these are just, I don't know if anybody can see some of these pictures, okay, but so yeah, Danby Lodge, which is obviously the visitor centre, which has been a visitor centre since 1979, as the sort of Eastern Park Visitor Centre, and the National Park are fantastic stewards of that building, and very good and cooperative tenants, and we've reassured Tom that we want that to continue for a very long time, and that's come directly from Lord Down, where we met Tom, so which is fantastic. We have a holiday let, which is Forester's Lodge at the top in the middle, and then Danby Castle, which some of you might know is a spectacular historic castle, 11th century, and then rebuilt in the 14th century, and now a successful wedding venue on the edge of Danby Village, and we've got model farm yards and keepers' houses and everything in between, but it really is spectacularly beautiful. I'm about to say most of these photos I have taken my phone, actually, as I've been going around in the last 18 months, so it shows the power of the new camera phones. This is, I won't go through a whole history lesson, you'll be pleased to know, but I did pick out a few key dates in red As I said, I could do the whole talk on this, but our timeline does start in 1153 Cistercian nunnery at Wycombe Abbey, and the remains of that are still there now today. And then the other dates I picked out, 1656, which was when the Danby estate was purchased from the Danvers family. And then 1904, when the family extended the abbey, the house is now at Wycombe Abbey, and moved there from a previous property which they'd sold at Carrick Hall. War hospital in the First World War, as many large houses were. And then importantly, Richard Down, the 12th Viscount, who I worked for, ascended to the title in 2002, taking over from his father. And you'll see how this sort of diversification and what he's done in the last 20 years and what his father did before him in the sort of 20, 25 years before that, how that gels together as we go through the different businesses. So in terms of sort of overview between the two estates, so there's Wycombe Estate, which is 6 miles west of Scarborough, a short distance from where we are here, obviously. And then there's the Danby Estate, which is 14,000 acres, about 12 miles west of Wisby. We have 56 full-time employees and many more seasonals. I'll come on to talk about our water park development. We can have up to 25 people employed there on a seasonal basis, and also through the game shooting as well we do, and also through mature plants, some of their staff are seasonal basis as well. The admin's through an estate office, which is a former LER building, which was shut in the 1950s, the Seamer to Pickering line. So that's quite attractive in itself. We have 4 property trusts and 3 limited companies, and our turnover is about 7.5 million, and it's grown considerably in the last 12 months through our water park development, but it's about 7.5 million in total. Just sort of lifting the helicopter out, so at Wycombe, obviously the Abbey and the sort of 2 courtyards of buildings are the sort of hub there. There's 100, I'll go into property in a little bit more detail next, but there's 120 houses, there's a 2,500 acre in-hand farm, 3 sort of core agricultural lettings to third parties. There's 1,800 acres which we lease to the Forestry Commission on a 999-year lease, which is a large part of Wycombe Forest, and we have another 1,000 acres in hand forestry. We have a caravan park, which I'll talk about, a large mineral processing site which is let to Hanson's, a rural business centre, workshops, a water park, I'll talk about that, a mature plant. So you can sort of start and see the diversity building up. And we have the Down Arms hotel and restaurant, which is actually leased to a third party. And then at Danby, so that's 14,000 acres. The principal assets there are the 2 grouse moors, so they are geographically separate. I mean, they're within sight of each other, but they are distinctly separate. And we have 4 keepers in houses and buildings, Danby Lodge, which we've spoken about, and also Danby Castle. And then 14 smaller let farms on the edge of the moor, which are largely livestock, obviously sheep on the moor or small dairy units, but all thriving. They often have second jobs doing other things, but and 3 of them have robotic milkers, so you can, and I've actually had them for quite a long time, so very, very successful. And we have a holiday let at Forester's Lodge, which is a 5-bedroom former farmhouse, which has been hugely popular. There's a map that shows you where everybody knows the geography fairly well. It's about sort of an hour between the 2 estates, so by car. So in terms of staffing, which I've touched on, so we're 56 full-time plus seasonals, and I won't read out the list, but you can see Wycombe Mature Plants makes up a fair proportion of that in terms of what they do, and I'll cover that in a second. And then I put the split of our turnover, and I'll come back to this several times, but that's one of our strengths, is the 11 different principal income streams across the estate, and especially in a pandemic, which some parts have been hit really hard. We're not wholly reliant on let property, fortunately, or when the grouse, we've had 2 very poor grouse seasons, and we're not wholly reliant on grouse income. Yes, it's important and pivotal in a strong year, but it's not the be end and end all that we haven't shot grouse for the last, sustainable numbers of grouse to make it economically viable for the last 2 years. And the sort of standout figure there for me is that 24% is let property. A lot of rural estates I've been involved with in the past have been, 95+%, rather than this spread. So yeah, I was just going to rattle through our 6 core businesses. So starting with the let property, which I've touched on a little bit, but I'll go into a little bit more detail. Farming, sporting, 2 strands to that. Mature plants business, St Helens in the park, which is our Caravan park, and the North Yorkshire Water Park. I wanted to tell you a bit about that. So in terms of property, some photos of some attractive property. We have 120 residential, about 28 commercial properties, and 32 agricultural lettings, and the minerals processing site at Hanson's, which is sand and gravel in our lowlands at southern end of Wycombe. They're not extracting on our land at the moment. They're on a neighbour, but they come back onto us in 2 or 3 years' time, and there's another 3 million tonnes of sand and gravel to extract, and then they process it through a plant which is leased to them on us. We have, I showed a slide earlier, so there's 2 estate villages, Wycombe, which is wholly owned, and then Ruston, short distance to the west, which is about 80% owned. As you can see, they're attractive properties, they're very popular. We have a very good lady in the office who manages the demand and the lettings for those, and we're always fully occupied. But there are buts with it. They're expensive to maintain. We're always re-roofing things. We've got 7 or 8 roofing projects on the go each year. So the maintenance is expensive, as is property compliance, and an increasing worry. There's talk of trying to reach a grade C energy performance certificate if anybody's in that world, and we won't have a single one that's C at the moment, and trying to get them to C is going to be extremely expensive. So that is on our worry list for sure. We have some commercial property. So this was a former farmyard in the middle of Wycombe, which is now 10,000 square feet of very high quality offices. Again, they're small units, they're well located, and we've got fantastic broadband. So they're extremely popular. Katrina in the office is very good at sort of shuffling the packs if somebody wants to move, and she's got a waiting list, and there was always moving pieces on the jigsaw puzzle. But and then this bottom development is Farfield, which is sort of light industrial, which is another 10,000 square feet, and we're actually looking at expanding that, doing another 15,000 square feet on the sort of lower part of this. And we've got interest. I could pre-let the whole lot straight away, and we've had some pre-application advice with Scarborough, and they're very supportive of it. Touch on broadband. This is important. So our anchor tenant in the business centre is a commuter company. And when they first moved in there, they put a fibre link which was 100 meg, and they've now increased that to 1,000 meg, and we beam that to all the houses. It's trenched to these business units. It's sent to St Helens. We put fibre into the water park, and we've just trenched it to Wycombe mature plants as well. So we've got this private network of fibre broadband across the whole estate, which is important for running our businesses and also those of attracting and retaining tenants. So that is a sort of big ongoing capital project at the moment. Wycombe Abbey is grade 2 star listed. It's private. It's not open to the public. There are very few events, we do hold events, but sort of by agreement. It's powered by wood chip biomass, which we use all our low-grade timber for, and that biomass boiler also does 2 central courtyards of about 10 flats as well. The roof is in good order, I hope, and being well maintained, but it's they're expensive properties to maintain, and we're having to upgrade the smoke and fire alarm, and that's an expensive exercise as well. We have 4 of our own maintenance team, and then we use external contractors. In terms of farming, I'll come back to our in-hand farm, but at Wycombe we have 2 principal lettings. One dairy farm, which is 500 cows, looking to expand to perhaps 1,000 cows in time, and we're supporting that move. And then the others are arable and beef operations. And then at Danby, I've mentioned the smaller let farms. We also spend a lot of time and attention, and it's something I'm particularly keen on. We're always repairing stone walls, fences, signage, hedges, roads and tracks, roadside verges, roadside trees, and hopefully you can tell when. I'd like to know when you're on and off our estate by how it's maintained. That's my sort of overarching ambition, and you can do that through signage as well. I know. So. Yeah, and we have lots of barns, some of which we know what we're going to do with, others we don't. And actually the one on the left, we just agree in terms with a bike hire person who operates out of his garage in Scarborough, hugely successful, and he's just signed a deal. I had an email before I left with one of the major cycle providers in the country, bike providers, who are very keen to have an outlet here. So we're excited about that. And the other barns, but we're maintaining roofs and walls, and until we know what to do with them. So there's the office in the middle, and there's biomass as well. So the top left picture is Hanson's processing plant. The middle one's the water park, which we'll come on to in a minute. And then the right-hand one is where we're going to do this extra a light industrial development at Farfield, another 15,000 square feet. And you can't see very well with the light, but that's part of our in-hand forestry through Bedale, which is very attractive. I wanted to touch on forestry, and actually this has been quite, I don't know if any other states are experiencing that, but we are, and it's been quite a sort of rapid shift really, but it's something I'm quite excited about, and hopefully others will support it too. So we are processing a lot of our own timber. I mean, whether we'll ever go back to having our own sawmill, I don't know, but we are, with that picture at the bottom is Douglas fir, which we've clad our water park buildings in, unseasoned, and the weathering down nicely, and we're going to start and use that on other property as well. So the use of, and we're doing benches and fencing materials and gate posts, etc., using our own timber rather than disappearing to tailor-made in Durham or something rather unexciting like that. And accessing timber is extremely hard. Well, we've got it on our doorstep. So we get a guy from Hawes who comes down with his mobile wood miser, and he's here at the moment with us for a week and staying in the Down Arms, and we produce a lot of our own timber. It's really exciting and very satisfying. And then our joiner in the middle is making owl boxes and benches and osprey poles and all sorts of things. So it's terribly exciting. Conscious of time. So the next sort of core business is Wycombe Farms Limited, which is contract farming business. Again, long established, probably 20 years as a contract farming operation. It was let to the Co-op and Farm Care, and then Wellcome Trust in 2014, and that carried on till 2018. And ever since then, it's been run by local contractors. So we have a 3-day-a-week farm manager who used to work for the co-ops and knows the property very well, and then a self-employed dryer man who rents a property from us. We're not swamped with equipment. We have a leased sprayer. We're just leasing a tractor on 2,500 acres. Wow, real innovators. And we've got a hedge cutter and a topper, again, just sort of keeping the presentation up. Our soils are very variable, sort of very light, sort of brashy, calcareous limestone into sort of deep peat, and sand as well, which the Caravan part was a sand quarry. And that's obviously the different formations of the Pickering Jurassic Lake, so the sand on the beach and then the deep peat and the gravel in the lake bed. Our cropping is the normal arable rotation, spring beans, wheat, winter and spring barley, and then we have grass and maize with third parties locally. And we also grow 150 acres of Mythcanthus, which is an energy crop which is baled in the spring and burned through Terra Vista at the energy plant at Brigg as well. So we're one of the largest growers of Mythcanthus, and actually that's in the news at the moment, isn't it, with the NFU pushing, and the Drax Power as well. And we have an external non-exec director and the sort of typical board meeting structure. So we don't have any of our own stock. It's all combinable cropping, and it's generally in the sort of risk profile of farming as a sort of low risk business within our portfolio. The next business is, two strands to the sporting. So Wycombe Game is pheasants and partridge shooting at Wycombe, and the second strand, which I'll talk about next, is Danby Game, which is the grouse shooting, obviously up at Danby Estate. Wycombe Game employs 2 keepers, was 3. They were doing rather more days I was comfortable with, so we're going to scale that back, probably do about half the number, stick with 2 keepers, but we're very good at our hospitality, and that's what people like, why they come back, and they have lunch in the old kitchen in the Abbey, and so I want to do it. We're good at doing it, and we've got the right topography and the setup and the equipment and skills, but I just want to scrunch it down and squeeze a bit more profit out of it. We're obviously very conscious of best practice, and I think we're good at our best practice, and we're proud members of the British Game Assurance Scheme, and we're regularly audited. We're having a big push on using our own game meat through our North Yorkshire Wood Park Cafe, and then we produce sausages and burgers in conjunction with a local butcher as well, and they're given back to teams of guns, and then, as I said, fed back through our cafe. So, and we're recycling cartridges. So we're really trying to do everything properly and sustainably. In terms, and here's some, some of our topography, which is stunning. So Danby Moors, which, again, I've touched on this. So 2 5,000-acre moors, 4 keepers, through very strong leadership. It's the sort of elite end of the sport, and is extremely popular, and they're very expensive, which is why they go home in their fancy helicopters occasionally. We have we're in a second term, just started a second term of a 10-year high-level stewardship scheme with the graziers, and obviously, we're doing the heather management and bracken control, and we have our own sheep flock on part of the moors as well. So that's been hugely successful, and a happy relationship with our graziers, I can report. But we have had 2 very poor grouse years, sparked by heather beetle last year, and then into the 28 days of continuous frost this spring hasn't helped us. So, in 2019 they shot over 4,000 brace on Danby Moors. Last year we shot 600 brace, and this year we've shot 800 brace. So it's expensive in those times. It's all a triple SI, of course, and a special SPA and SAC. And there's one small area of deep peat up on Danby High Moor where we have restricted burning prescriptions. The grazing is administered through a court leat, which is only 3, I think, in the North York Moors, and ours. Well, it's certainly got minutes back to 1726. Our foreman tells us so, and the next court leat is actually next week, which I'm going to. So Wycombe Mature Plants. So this business was started by the current Lord Down's father in 1979, really as a sort of volume tree producer, but now as a specialist mature tree, shrub and hedge producer, sort of instant landscaping. That's sort of how they badge themselves. Instant landscaping for the impatient is our sort of unofficial title. So if you don't want to wait for a hedge to grow to shield out your neighbour you don't like the look of, you can come and visit us. 60% of the stock is containerised, and the rest is grown in the ground. There's a very complicated automatic irrigation system, and obviously the busy time comes now, sort of November to spring, and lifting and processing. And obviously, COVID has been, this business has benefited from COVID in that people haven't been going abroad and spending money on holidays. They've been more time in the garden and seeing the neighbours they don't like, so they're spending money with us. So we've had 2 very good years. It's 250 acres of nursery ground, so it's quite extensive, and they're based in a walled garden next to the Abbey, which once upon a time had 9 gardeners in it, and now there's 20 mature plants employees running around keeping themselves busy. The production, one of the sort of interesting parts of this business is you literally do have to, Adam, our manager, really does have to polish his crystal ball, because you're forecasting demand sort of 3 to 5 years in advance. So most of the time he gets it right, but not always. So 1 year we may be short of stock. Posh Private is his that was our target audience. So if anybody in that camp, please again come and talk to us. And then we're putting high-speed fibre broadband into the office, and VoIP telephones and refreshing websites. So St Helens in the Park is also a long-established diversified business on the estate. 1974, this was in a former sand quarry. There's 250 touring pitches, 10 pods, and storage, caravan storage for about 100. There's a full-time staff, this is run in hand, there's full-time staff of 7, which is sort of office staff and warden couples. And then in terms of sort of infrastructure, there's 2 warden lodges, 3 shower blocks, reception building. It is a very capital and hungry business. You're forever having to replace roads or refurbish showers, or we're going through a policy of, well, those are the old pods in the top middle, and then we're replacing them with something a bit fancier as the bottom left. We've got a power issue. We've got to upgrade the power because we're right on the edge of the sort of power demand in early season. So we either spend 200,000 with Northern Power Grid, which is rather unexciting, or my favourite solution is 150 kilowatts of solar, which will get us over that Easter peak, and then we can feed that back into the park for the rest of the year. And we've got this is in the national park, by the way, this site. We've got an ideal. Well, I hope the park planners will agree. It's a grazing paddock to the side. It's completely screened. It's south-facing. It's sloping. I mean, it's almost as if it was meant to be. So.
Oh, 5 minutes.
Right. Yeah. Perfect. Okay. So the sort of current jewel in our crown and the sort of area of focus is the North Yorkshire Water Park, which has been. This was a series of 6 lakes, sand and gravel extraction, and the largest of which is 85 acres. I mean, there's been sailing and windsurfing and water sports on there for about the last sort of 20 years or so. But in the last 5 years, there was a large aqua park in the water, inflatable obstacle course, which again was successful. And then they got planning just before I started for a real revamp of the buildings and facilities, with a wakeboard line in, and really ramped it up. We operated on a sort of very gentle basis during COVID last year, which was helpful for me. I mean, we nearly didn't open at all, but I'm glad we did, because I could see the demand and the fact that people really wanted to be down there. So we got planning through Scarborough, which was a fairly long road, but that's a different story, mainly about ecology. And once everybody realised that actually we weren't there to harm ecology, and actually, if anything, the ecology sort of bounced back and certainly hasn't been detrimental. And I was talking to a contractor just before I left, and the ecology just carries on round a building site. It's incredible, really, and it's the same in forestry as well. But that's a different. So we spend over £1 million. We had issues of supply chain problems, Suez Canal, Evergreen. It was a really convenient excuse for the builders, wasn't it? That we can't get any product because it's all stuck in the Suez Canal. It's amazing what was. And this is some of our Douglas fir on these buildings, and we've had an amazing summer, and we've had about 40,000 visitors through, and it's given us the confidence to go for the next phase of CapEx, which is this zip line on the bottom right, which we have got planning for from Scarborough Council. That was an artist's impression of the buildings, and somebody did say, you do realise if you publish an artist's impression of what you're planning to do, you've got to make sure it looks like that, and I think it does. So building works in progress. This is the building of our cafe, so that's what we started with on the 4th of January, and it hasn't got the tables and chairs in, but it's been extremely popular this summer. And some more buildings. That's the aqua park in the background, which is the sort of main attraction, I suppose. But yeah, really pleased with the sort of look and the feel of the park, and particularly the use of our own timber. So yeah, just to finish, conscious of time, hopefully you can see through some of the sort of timelines, particularly with the Wycombe mature plants and the Caravan park, the estate was definitely what I would classify as early adopters. John Down started the works in the 70s, and then Richard Down has really accelerated that in the last 20 years with Robert. So which is clearly very evident. And as I said earlier, there's sort of 11 different income streams, so when one's up, the other's down. We do have a very varied risk profile, which again is good for us. So farming and property is low risk, and the water park and mature plants I would classify as high risk, and I put St Helens and sporting sort of somewhere in the middle. That's sort of COVID aside, really. But where do we go next? Well, lots of areas, I think, but it's sort of managing that potential in a sort of controlled, measured, steady pace. And obviously we're going to look at the next phase of the water park now, the zip line, doing the road, pulling in fibre broadband, refurbishing the existing showers which were there. But then there's lots of other things. I'm particularly excited about a possible large-scale solar farm, which we're in agreement to lease with, and they have just accepted a grid offer from Northern Power Grid eventually. This is a fantastic site, and I've looked at quite a few in my previous job. It's completely shielded, there's nobody overlooking it, it's on very poor agricultural land, we've got access to it, it's right under 132 kVA line. The problem is getting it into the grid, and Northern Power Grid have now come up with a figure which has lots of zeros after it, which our tenants are going to have to pay to put it in. But they have accepted that, and we will power every house in Scarborough if this comes off. So we're very keen to do it. But there's lots of other things. We want to do accommodation around the lakes. I've got somebody interested in a farm shop in a very nice sort of rural retail yard. I want to do a tree house either for accommodation or part of our sporting hospitality offering. I've spoken about our bike car guy, the zip line, pods. I mean, the sky's the limit, but obviously in a controlled, sort of measured, without David Steele getting too excited and spending. It's easy borrowing money, isn't it? But it's harder paying it back. I've not enough time, which I thought I might, for biodiversity, but safe to say that, again, I think there's a very long association with biodiversity on the estate, particularly in the farm. We've got 25 kilometres of fantastic hedgerows, and we plant 700 or 800 metres every year. There's lots of tree planting going on. And I suppose the best way to summarise that is that in 2018 the estate was awarded the Bledisloe Gold Medal for best practice in an outstanding contribution for estate management. So that, I mean, to me that sort of says it all really. But there's lots more to go, and as Andy touched on, this is really coming into focus. And I think, never more so with rural assets being in the sort of awareness agenda. Climate change, flood mitigation, food security problems, wellness, mental health. Rural assets have a fantastic and very exciting part to play in unlocking all those problems, I think. There are opportunities to monetize some of it. Carbon trading, biodiversity net gain, which is to do with planning and having an enhancement pre and post planning and offsetting, but you've got to know what you've got first. So we've just started our natural capital audit. We've taken on a graduate from Harper Adams, and we're measuring that through sort of on-site calculations, GIS, digital mapping, and working very closely with our farm management team who are very in tune with it. So we're going to learn what we've got, and then we'll work out what we're going to do with our natural capital audit going forward. So. And we're also doing our carbon footprint as well, so that we can measure, monitor, and improve on that year to year as well. So, sorry, a bit of a rattle through biodiversity, but it's extreme. It's really, it runs through the sort of whole thread of what we do across both estates. It's always been there, and as just to emphasise a point, I think it's coming into focus like never before, and what rural properties and estates can offer everybody. So. That's all I was going to say, but apologies for rambling probably far too fast. But I'm very happy to take any questions.
We'll have you in the Q&A session after.
Yeah.
Oh, really?